Coming up on this week's show, one of the UK's biggest game studios turns 40.
An Amiga classic lands on the Mega Drive.
And we get the story of Worms with this week's guest, Andy Davidson.
And the Retro Hour podcast is brought to you each and every Friday with our friends, our sponsor, Bitmap Books. Now, of course, today we're going to be talking about Worms that famously started life on the Amiga. Have you seen Commodore Amiga, a visual compendium? Now, this is a real celebration of Amiga gaming, covering all the early titles like Defender of the Crown, Barbarian in there as well, through to all the games that we played as kids, Rocket Ranger, Cannon Fodder Speedball, Worms, of course, in there as well, and weighing in at more than 420 pages. A real love letter to Amiga gaming. You can check that out. It's in stock right now on their website at bitmapbooks.com. And with our friends at Replay Events, who this weekend are heading to Crawley for their huge gaming market. That's going to be happening tomorrow, Saturday the 9th of August. You can expect loads of traders, grab yourself some amazing bargains, and there's even going to be heaps of pinball tables that you can play for free there as well. So you can get your ticket right now for the Crawley Gaming Market. Head to crawleygamingmarket.com and I'll pop that link in this week's show notes. Hello and welcome to the Retro Hour podcast, episode number 492, your weekly dose of retro gaming and technology news with me, Dan Wood.
Me, Ravi Abbott.
And me, Joe Fox.
And great to have you joining us for another podcast where we bring you up to speed on what's been happening in the wonderful world of retro gaming and technology from over the last 7 days. And welcome on more veterans of the industry to tell us the story about their career, the games they worked on, the companies they were at in the second half of the show. And of course, this week, another amazing guest going to be going inside the world of possibly the greatest multiplayer game of all time. We'll tell you more about that in just a minute, though. Before that, though, Ravi, you all packed then? You got your clothes packed in for your trip over to Norway, then Estonia afterwards in that little bag that you've got to fit under the seat in front of you on the Ryanair flight that we're getting?
I actually got some more baggage because I want to take some T-shirts over and, maybe a few Retro Hour books as well. We're going over to Retro Messe, which... is an event that we do every year, pretty much. The guys in Norway have been fantastic. They love having us out and hosting the panels. And we love going out there. It's such an amazing event because there's a lot of guests that they get that we don't usually get over in these UK events. And amazingly, it's quite easy to get to as well, like just a small flight from Manchester Airport.
What's it, like an hour and a half,
if
that? Yeah, an hour and a quarter. We're going to be there next weekend. Retro Messe, Sandefjord in Norway, happening over the weekend of August 16th and 17th. So tickets for that are available right now. We're going to be also recording the panels like we always do. Looking forward to doing some of these. Jerome Tell, obviously the Commodore 64 music legend. Got a panel with him on Saturday afternoon. Actually a bit of a music theme this year as well. Lots of that happening around the weekend too. Plus something that I'm really hyped for. Going to be opening the show on Saturday morning. Our first panel of the weekend is a big one. We're going to be interviewing Takaya Imamura, who was a designer behind some really famous games. Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask, F-Zero as well.
Yeah, I love this show because, you get like Japanese guests coming over and we don't speak Japanese either, so we do have a translator there, and it just works really well. Last year we did Yoko Shimomura, and she's from Street Fighter fame and Kingdom Hearts as well. Really, really good interview. Really enjoyed that. We're going to put them out on the podcast as well, so you guys can all hear. And there's a few other guests as well. We've got Graham Norgay, Ross Trezenga. We've got all of the kind of rare crew that are usually there. I think Grant Kirkhope, and we've also got Richard Jacques as well, Jet Set Radio. So there's a lot of music, and it's going to be absolutely fantastic. I think they do like a little concert as well on one of the nights. So
the Friday night.
Enjoy that,
Yeah, so it's always an amazing weekend. So you want to get tickets for that, retrometa.no is the website. I'll put that in the show notes. If you're going to be there next weekend, do come say hi. And of course, like I said, we'll be recording all the panels to play out on the podcast in coming weeks.
We're bringing Paul Jury as well from Retro Gamer across, so that should be good fun.
giving him his Norway initiation. You're taking him for a sauna, I think, on the Friday. Is that right?
Yeah. Should be fun.
So hopefully we'll see you there if you're going to be at Retro Mesa next week. Now, I did say we're going to be celebrating one of the greatest multiplayer games of all time. Today, we're getting the story of Worms.
Oh, man. Like, I've wanted Andy Davidson on the podcast since we started, like, episode 1. It's just such an amazing story, the story of Worms, because it was very late into the life of the Amiga. And, you know, this game was developed from an Amiga fan using kind of like game creation software. A very simplistic game that was all about skill and gameplay, you know, when other stuff was coming out with like a lot higher end graphics.
And sometimes, let's be honest, quite a bit of fluke in it. When my brother beat me on that, it was always like, the wind was just blowing in the right way.
It was all about the gameplay. It was all about the wind, all about the weapons, the humour in there as well. And Worms is one of those games, like Lemmings, that was ported over to so many systems. And the difference was, you know, you had that multiplayer fun. And it's great to hear the kind of story in the background from Andy.
Were you a Worms fan back in the day, Joe?
Yeah, man. I always enjoyed Worms. We had it for the Mega Drive and played it at a friend's house on his little computer, which I've later learned was an Amiga. But yeah, I loved Worms. I used to go home because I was only a little boy, and I'd draw like levels of Worms, and I'd like draw like little bases for them and stuff like, oh yeah, if we dig down and then put a girder above here and all this kind of stuff, like nobody would ever be able to beat me. And then I'd try and do it the next time I'd go over, and I'd get like really mardy because I'm like, stop trying to kill me while I'm building my base.
It is like, it's that experience though, isn't it? Playing it multiplayer is the way to do it. I mean, you can play it against a computer, which is all right, but that, you know, if you're talking like kind of couch co-op, it's like one of the best, isn't it, for getting your adrenaline going and punching your mate in the arm. For me, it was like, I remember getting it on, I had it on the Amiga, had it on the CD32 randomly, and then played it at university as well. Worms Armageddon on a Dreamcast that someone I knew had would often go there.
Dreamcast as well, that's an odd system to play it on.
Yeah, it was pre-drinks we used to do, a guy lived in the apartments opposite us, the Dreamcast, we'd all go there. A few blasts of that forward out into town. And then, of course, it's an interesting story because Worms came out in 1995, which was a year after Commodore went bankrupt, when a lot of companies were leaving the Amiga. But then in 1997, Team 17 had their last hurrah because he brought out one of the greatest versions of Worms, Director's Cut, that was an Amiga exclusive. Sold only 5,000 copies, it turns out, but to me, that is like one of the ultimate versions of Worms, isn't it? And a great send-off.
It was like the testing ground. So all of the kind of new cool weapons that went onto the later versions were in that. And Andy's actually updating it because he loves that version so much. You know, he put his heart and soul into it. And he also said it had to come out. You know, there's lots of stuff he wanted to add. If he kept going, it'd still probably be like, you know, developing the original Worms DC. So now he's doing an update. And the cool thing is he's got the whole community involved. So there's community maps going in. There's lots of plans for this version. And I'm really excited to see an update, actually, because I also remember drawing maps on Deluxe Paint and playing them with my friends and, you know, adding South Park sound effects. That's what I used to have in there and stuff. And it was really, really customizable.
It was an early example of that, really, wasn't it? Games that, you know, had a whole modern community.
Yeah, user-created content,
Yeah, plus there's loads on like Aminet and stuff like that. So, it's a really interesting story as well, kind of how it got published. You know, he was making it just for him and his friends, and then a magazine competition that went a bit wrong, and then obviously, as luck would have it, ended up in the hands of Team 17, and that continues to this day. So, if you're a fan of Worms, definitely going to enjoy this week's chat with the creator, Andy Davidson. He's on the podcast as our special guest in around half an hour from now. But of course, first half of the show, that's when we have a bit of a chat about what's been happening in retro from over the last week. He did mention, Ravi, that we're going to be hanging out with the guys from Rare, the original guys from Rare in Norway next week at Retro Mesa. Actually, it was quite nice to see that Rare's legacy did get officially recognised this week in the town where it all started, Ashby de la Zouche.
I always think of Adrian Mole when I Ashby de la Zouche. Yeah.
I was thinking of the game Universe as well. Do you remember that? The adventure game. The start of that, I think the main character, I think his name was Boris. It starts with him riding his bicycle through the snow on Christmas Eve in Ashby de la Zouch.
Is the Doomsday Book? Is it Ashby de la Zouch? That's the only one that you can actually go through.
Oh, really?
Virtually with the pictures. I think it may be. I might be wrong on that.
Well, the thing that Ashby is most famous for in our eyes has, of course, been the place where it all started for Rare. I mean, originally it was a company called Ashby Computers and Graphics Limited that was founded in 1982, and then, of course, became Ultimate Play the Game. Did loads of stuff on the 8-bit platforms before becoming Rare in, I think it was about 1985, 86, maybe a bit later.
85.
85, yeah. So they've the reason that we're talking about this is they've been officially recognised with a blue plaque this week that's been presented by the council there. Now, if you're not from the UK, a blue plaque is basically it's a sign that they put up on historical buildings to mark that this location either was like, the birthplace of a famous person or a former building on that site. And a historical marker, really, isn't it, to recognise it?
Yeah, we've got one in Nottingham, ibuprofen was invented here, which is
nice.
Quite good to see, and in a kind of medical facilities.
We'll be thankful of that the morning after the concert in Norway next weekend.
I think this is awesome, though. Really good to see. In Dundee, they've got the Lemmings statue and stuff, and they've got history marking it in Derby. They have Lara Croft Way.
Yeah.
It's good to see these kind of things being recognised and actually part of our culture, digital culture, actually getting recognised as historical.
Although I did see, because there has been a bit of chat on Facebook, that apparently they might have put the blue plaque on the wrong building.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because someone's actually found an image from 1982 of Ashby Computers and Graphics Limited, and they've lined up kind of the little holes in the wall where the sign hung.
Right.
And looks like it might have been 2 or 3 doors down.
Whoops.
Maybe they can move it. It's but that's a typical computer game thing. Actually, you've got
There's even been talk of people saying, right, I'm going down tonight with a drill, I'm moving it. So, details aside, very cool to see that Rare / Ashby Computer and Graphics Limited / Ultimate Play the Game are getting recognised on what is actually their 40th year, obviously, when they became Rare, like you said, Joe, 1985. And actually, to tie in with that, there is some new stuff coming out on modern systems, including a great collection for the Evercade with 12 of their classic games on there.
Yeah, so this is coming in November 2025, which I think they've missed a trick there. Surely it should have come out maybe this month if it's the 40th anniversary this month. But you know what these game developers are like. The anniversary usually goes over a year or two. I mean, with Resident Evil, I think we're still celebrating their 25th anniversry, even though we're a year off their 30th anniversary.
They like to ham it up a bit, don't they?
They like to ham it up, exactly. But yeah, no, this is coming out in November for the Evercade. And obviously, famously with the Evercade, it will work on all Evercade systems, which is really cool. And what got me excited is it does say this is the first time we're seeing Conkers being re-released in an official capacity. And I was like, oh my God, Conker's Bad Fur Day is on it. Unfortunately, it isn't. It is a Conker's Pocket Tales, which I think was a Game Boy Advance game of Conker's, which is still cool to see. But this is going to be 20 quid or $30 or 25 euros. And like you say, it's going to have 12 games on there. So quite a few Spectrum games, a couple of 8-bit games, and a couple of arcade games as well. So
I think they may have Conkers on a future one if the Evercade can handle it. I know it's really hard for emulation Conkers, but this looks like Rare Collection 1, so they've got a lot of Specky games and some of the earlier stuff, so maybe...
Which would make sense if they're doing it kind of chronologically, that they get the early games in there from the Spectrum.
Yeah, that would make sense. So yeah, we've got Attic Attack, Gunfight, Jetpack, Night Law, Lunar Jetman, Saber Wolf, Underworld, Cobra Triangle, the 8-bit version, RC Pro AM 8-bit version, Battletoads, the 8-bit version, as well as Battletoads Arcade, and then Conker's Pocket Tales. So it is all 8-bit games, essentially. I did.
And the only one I've actually played on there is Battletoads, to be honest.
Yeah, same Battletoads for me as well. I didn't spot that it was Collection 1, like Ravi says. So yeah, I imagine there'll be a second one a few months later as well, where we might see some more of the 16-bit games.
You've not played Saberwolf? Or
Maybe the C64 version, actually.
get that Spectrum Next fired up, mate.
Yeah. So, or my Evercade when this collection comes out. So I think that's one good thing about the Evercade collections is it's not always the most obvious games. Which I think is always nice because you do get a lot of these compilations that are re-released, and there's been a few rare ones over the years, and it's always a big hit. Which I imagine stuff like GoldenEye, as you mentioned, Ravi, maybe that couldn't run on the Evercade anyway. But it is nice to see that some of these early titles are getting a bit of love on there as well.
It's
and they're always
tough
because
Rare games they really push the limits of the hardware, like later on especially as well. So getting those kind of custom emulated perfect versions are quite hard.
It would make sense if there's like a collection too with the Super Nintendo stuff on there as well. I'm pretty sure it could handle that. But yeah, $19.99, really good value for money. So one to look out for a bit later this year. And also as we celebrate Rare, there's going to be something else as well. This looks really cool actually, because obviously next week when we're in Norway, there's a music concert with the Rare guys on the Friday night. If you love the music of Rare games, they're actually putting out a Rare 40th anniversary box set 4 collection vinyl set, aren't they?
Yeah, so they've got some merch as well. So Rare Limited have like Varsity hoodies and stuff, and a Rareware t-shirt and a pin. But then also they've got this vinyl coming out from I Am 8-Bit, who do some fantastic video game vinyls, and this just looks lovely. A 4 vinyl collection, and they're basically this vinyl with colours inside it. It's translucent, but really beautiful kind of effects on there. They've got a lot of games covered in here as well. For me, Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie as well. Battletoads, of course, we're going to be talking to Grant Kirkhope as well. So, some of the composers of these, also David Wise, they've got Perfect Dark Zero there, Killer Instinct, Conkers, so many, Blast Corps. I could go through all of the names, but this looks like a really good collection, and it's $100. Vinyl is expensive. I think for this level of premium vinyl as well, having 4 in there, it's quite a decent price, actually.
Well, you go to HMV and buy a repress of Michael Jackson Thriller. That's like 40 quid.
Yeah.
So,
and it's usually like heavy gram vinyl. So it's a lot higher quality than the older kind of stuff we used to get.
Yeah, so pre-orders for that are available now. So happy 40th birthday, Rare. Looking forward to celebrating with the guys next week in Norway. Now, if we're talking British studios, actually around these parts where we live, obviously where Rare are based in Twycross, only about half an hour away from us, as is Derby, where Core Design were back in the day. And obviously most people remember Core Design for Lara Croft. They often called her Tomb Raider. She was kind of the female Indiana Jones. But before that, there was Rick Dangerous. It was pretty much a complete Indiana Jones ripoff, wasn't he?
Yeah, Simon Phipps, the artist behind Rick Dangerous, we've had on the podcast, really nice guy. I'm amazed to see this. This is a port of Rick Dangerous getting released for the Mega Drive. I'm shocked that it wasn't on the Mega Drive in the first place.
I think at that stage they were only doing computers, weren't they? Because I know it came out on the Amiga, the ST, C64, apparently Spectrum as well, which... I don't remember seeing the Spectrum version back in the day. But yeah, I think, in that era, I think Core were pretty much microcomputers only. Version on the Amstrad as well. Sam Coupe version of it as well, apparently you can get. So yeah, it was 1989, so I guess, the Mega Drive wasn't out in the UK at that stage.
But I was thinking maybe it could have got ported later or something.
Yeah.
It's such a good platformer and really actually fits that system well.
Yeah. Solid as a rock.
Really tough, yeah.
My biggest memory of playing Rick Dangerous as a kid is this. All the way through it, dying every 10 seconds.
Is that the death sound?
Yes, of course it is, Joe. You know I heard that.
Dan's not had a baby. He's crying.
But I will say one of the most iconic death sounds of all time, I'd say. So Incredible game, 2D platformer, as I said, really tough, really, bit of a memory game, really, isn't it? You got to memorize where everything comes up in it. But yeah, there is a fan port of it by Dom Kid using the legendary Scorpion engine. And this is actually based on the 2008 Nintendo Wii edition. And also, Dom Kid is part of a crew called Z-Team, who actually did a remake on the Amiga back in 2023, which I think we did cover on the podcast. Yeah. Then, didn't we? That they kind of upgraded the colours. It might have been AGA only.
I think these graphics are suiting the Mega Drive so well. Joe, you're a Mega Drive aficionado. What do you think of that?
I'm surprised it didn't come out on the Mega Drive. Like, even like a couple of years later. This looks like the palette of it, like, and the graphical style screams kind of like Mega Drive circa 1991. Like, it reminds me of like Toki and like Tailspin, the kind of like palette and graphical style of those games. Because when I think Mega Drive, like I think early Mega Drive, you've got like Altered Beast, etc., Alex Kidd, where it's kind of finding its feet. And then at the end of the Mega Drive, you've got these really, really crazy looking like pushing the limit games like Ranger X and Gunstar Heroes and stuff. This looks like proper in the middle of the life of the Mega Drive. And it just looks like it'd look really at home there. I really like the look of it. It looks like a solid platformer. It looks graphically, like I say, I love the graphic style, frame rate and everything looks really good. Does also play on the Mega Drive, which is great. Like the actual emulation download, you can put it onto an EverDrive and get it working properly on Mega Drive, which is great to see. Because sometimes they're like, oh yeah, they work on the Mega Drive in emulation on the computer.
Yeah, it needs more memory or something.
Yeah, but this does actually work on EverDrive, in your actual physical hardware console, which I think is really cool. So it's cool to see. Just baffles me that it hadn't come out before. Like, I recognized it straight away. Obviously, I'm not an Amiga guy. And I was like, did this not come out before? Did this come out on SNES or something? But yeah, no, never did.
Well, now it's here. Remastered graphics, looks beautiful as well. So much more colourful.
And it's on itch as well. So, it's name your own price. So if you can support these guys, put in the amount you can, because I think this is really well done.
Yeah, and quite usefully, they've also remapped the buttons as well, so it's not just up to jump like a lot of those games were back then. A to jump, B to
Amiga games up to jump. I hated that.
That's available right now. I will link up their itch page in this week's show notes. Very nice to see. Now, while we're talking of things celebrating anniversaries, something else that is 30 years old this year is Descent, which was obviously a huge part of gaming history. There's a really in-depth article on Ars Technica where they actually say it's kind of a bit of a forgotten classic. Not many people talk about Descent these days.
Descent blew my mind. I don't know if you guys have played Descent at all.
No, never. I don't think I've even ever heard of it, to be perfectly honest. Which is
it was a very PC thing. There's also PlayStation version and the Mac. So this game came out when CD-ROM stuff was really emerging, but it was just before Quake, basically. But it had that full 3D environment, but that 6 degrees of freedom 3D. So previously on first-person shooters, you'd had kind of fake 3D where you're looking up and stuff's changing, but it's not really 3D. You can't flow, you can't really go around things. This really had that feel, and it was a different one. So it was based on a first-person shooter engine, but you were like a ship that was flying through small mining tunnels. It was packaged. I initially got it with my CD-ROM drive. So when you bought your CD-ROM drive, they were like, have a copy of Descent as well.
To play on Windows 95?
Yes, but also it was software rendered. So it was like the first proper use of polygons. They're like Quake used them later, but a full use of polygons. And it was software rendering. So, graphics cards weren't really kind of used that much later until later on. And then they implemented hardware rendering with it. But it was such a kind of revolutionary game. Like when I first saw it, I was like, oh my God. And you got to remember, this is before Quake as well, before you saw that kind of full 3D environment in a first person shooter. It did make me feel sick.
It's funny, whenever I hear people talk about Descent, that is the one complaint I always hear, that, oh my God, like motion sickness is off the charts. But,
yeah, you were used to lower frame rates back then. But just talking to the kind of systems that it was ported to, this really shows what time it was released in. It came out on Riscos as well.
The Archimedes.
Yeah, and BIOS as well for the B-Box.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very weird kind of revolutionary game, and it's 30th anniversary at the moment, and I've not really seen anywhere celebrating it that much, or there's not been any kind of like big, revival or like
no HD upgrade planned, or
no. I'd love to kind of see it. I'd love to see a bit of a smoother frame rate. It's really interesting because I used to play Millennium Falcon, and you'd be going through tunnels on the PC very fast, and Descent felt like that as well. Like there'd be sections of the mine blowing up, and you're in these narrow tunnels, and you've got to kind of flow through it. A bit hard to fly, like kind of Wipeout style, but a really interesting kind of play on the first person shooter genre. And like stuff later on, they had like Quake Rally, and they had stuff where they'd put the first person shooter engine and they'd used it for different types of games. And this was that first kind of use of like, oh, we're going to have a spaceship instead of, somebody running around. They could have easily done somebody running around a corridor, but this changed it a bit.
It's interesting as well to look at the history of the platforms it was meant to come out on. You mentioned there's some quite obscure ones, B-Box and Icon Archimedes.
Yeah.
But apparently, so there was going to be a Sega 32X version of it that was the first console version they were going to do.
That would have ran like
and it was into
mud.
Yeah, well, maybe that's why it was cancelled. Then they changed their mind and started working on a 3DO version of it that was showcased at E3 in 1995. Never came out. No one knows why. Then they switched that effort to working on a Panasonic M2 version of it. Obviously, that system was cancelled. So they said, oh, we'll change our mind. We'll do it on the Sega Saturn instead. Turned out then they realised that obviously Saturn uses quads, PlayStation polygons. They said the port wasn't really possible. So by then the Saturn was kind of fading away anyway. Then they moved to the Nintendo 64. Apparently they're working on a version of it called Ultra Descent. They ran into a load of problems with that, and then eventually got cancelled. And then this actually goes up to 2010 when they were apparently working on a Wii version of it. And it was even going to use the Wii balance board.
Oh, that would have been cool.
Yeah.
Like to fly it, yeah. I
missed the deadline and then it got cancelled.
It's like one of these kind of like lesser known titles, but in the PC kind of gaming world, everyone's like, oh, Descent, because it was that upgrade kind of game, as you were upgrading, that was the one that you would show people. The gameplay wasn't the best, but I really kind of enjoyed it, and I thought, that it really marks a part of history. And to think it's been 30 years since, that kind of came out, I'm like, my God, I still
getting
think
old, Ravi.
Quite advanced, yeah.
Yeah, so, and for me, I mean, as somebody who, it's a game that obviously I've been aware of, never really sat down with it before. But I'm thinking this weekend, I want to see if I can get the BOS version running on Haiku.
Yeah, there's a Morphos version as well.
Oh, is there?
Okay. Yeah. I've got the original Descent CD if you want a copy as well. So, yeah.
You know me, Ravi, if I'm going to play it, I'm going to do it on something weird and obscure.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's why you'd like it. Yeah.
So, happy 30th birthday, Descent. That's one final story for everybody. Patrons get a few extra. We'll do those in just a minute. This one is kind of a follow-up to something that we covered, which is an Ocarina of Time style game called Azaran. There's actually got a NES style spin-off now.
Yeah, so we covered this a few months ago because it looked like a really promising Ocarina of Time kind of like style game, with Z targeting and graphically very, very similar to the N64 and gameplay style very similar to, Zelda. And it got quite a lot of buzz. There hasn't really been any updates on that game, I don't think, since then. However, the developer of the game, who is only known as Benji, and he's also the publisher, released the game earlier this week on the 5th of August with kind of like no really, what's the word they call it? Like a shadow drop, where it just comes out, Azaran the Demon Bottle on Steam. But it's a 8-bit NES style, which is obviously, once again, a homage to The Legend of Zelda, the original NES version. If you, at a glance, you would assume it is the original Zelda game. However, once you take a closer look, you can notice that the little sprite for Azaran, the main character, is a different character sprite, obviously, to Link, and uses a little spear rather than a sword. But the dungeons that you navigate, that you're going through, are incredibly similar to the look of that original Zelda, but obviously they're just very polished, with it obviously being a modern game and not a 40-year-old game now and being on PC. But what I really love about it is this game is currently only £1.52 on Steam.
Wow.
Which I think is fantastic. Soon to go up to £1.69 on the 12th of August.
Get in there quick.
So get in there quick. You got to get in there quick. But yeah, it looks like a good little game. What I think's really good about it is a complete it in one playthrough. You can do it in one sitting. It doesn't say how long the game is, but I imagine maybe an hour or two. And I imagine the game has kind of been put out to potentially fund the continuation of the main game, just to get a few, maybe get a little bit of money together to carry on with the main game. There's no kind of information on that. I'm just speculating there. I've not been told that or read that. I just feel like that could be the case. But the
N64 style one's called Islands of the Djinn, isn't it?
That's it, yeah.
There was a demo they put out at the end of May, but I think it looks like the last update.
Yeah.
So there's no word on full release of that yet. So I mean, it's good that they're doing something in the meantime to kind of raise awareness and maybe get some new fans through the door as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's got all puzzles in there, like the original Zelda. It's literally to a T down the right-hand side of the screen. You've got your map as you explore the dungeons. You've got to find keys, blow up cracks in the walls. It's very, very close to Zelda, to a point where I hope Nintendo don't come and do anything. But yeah, no, I think this looks wicked. Action-adventure, puzzler game. Very, very, very Zelda-like.
Yeah, so that's your vibe. That's available now on Steam. Like I said, bargain price as well.
Yeah.
So I'll link that and, of course, all the rest of the stories in your show notes. You don't have to Google around. I'll save you that job. Just check out the notes on your podcast app, or you can head to our website, theretrohour.com, and click through from there. Now, we are going to be talking to Andy Davidson in just a minute, getting the story of Worms. Before we do that, let's take a sec to give a massive thank you to a regular supporter of this little podcast. That is our friends at Shopify. Now, if you're a regular listener, you'll know about Shopify. They're the ones with this incredible sound. The sound of making another sale. So maybe you sell, anything at all. We've got, obviously, you do your video games markets. Mm-hmm. That often when you go around them, no one brings money to them anymore, do they?
Not much, no. It's all card.
Yeah. So that's the thing. You've got to be, got to do what your audience wants, which Shopify are there for you as well, whether you sell in person or online. My missus actually uses Shopify to sell some of her embroidered stuff that she makes. We've been selling our books on there. I've got a friend who sells T-shirts on there as well. That's the thing. It's actually really scalable because Shopify is the all-in-one commerce platform, ranging from people like my missus who just does it for a bit of fun to household names like Mattel and Gymshark who use it as well. So it actually grows with your business. The great thing about it is, if you're selling in person, they do these little point-of-sale systems, so you can take it with you. But also online, you can go there and actually they give you your own design studio. So you set up your Shopify store, and you can do this in like an hour on your lunch break. There are hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Look absolutely beautiful. And they will let you build a gorgeous online store, and you can match it to your brand style as well. So you can put your custom fonts in there, your colours, and it is literally all drag and drop, point and click. You don't need to know coding, anything like that. And it's even packed with some really helpful AI tools, which I know a lot of people are like, AI. The thing about Shopify is they actually really help you out with your product descriptions, your page headlines, even get your photography looking gorgeous as well. So it's actually AI that's useful. And then it's kind of like having a marketing team behind you as well. It can do your email and social media campaigns. So wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, Shopify can get you there as well. So it's basically an all-in-one commerce expert, world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory, international shipping, even can do stuff like processing returns and beyond. So really you can focus on the thing that you love doing, which is running your business and making your products. So Shopify will take care of the rest for you. So if you sell anything at all, online or in person, why don't you give Shopify a try today? Now we've got you an amazing offer. You can try it out for just £1 a month. Head to our link, the note that we sent you, shopify.co.uk/retro hour. I'll put that in this week's show notes so you can click through. Shopify.co.uk/retro hour. Get ready to take your business to the next level today and hear a lot more of this. Okay, next, going to be getting the story of a legendary game series, Worms, with this week's special guest, Andy Davidson, is next on the Retro Hour podcast.
You're with the Retro Hour podcast, and we're here today with Andy Davidson. And God, we've wanted him on the podcast for so long, ever since we started, because we are huge fans of Worms and the story of Worms as well. The background of Worms, of a kind of very late Amiga game, fantastic game, kind of dominated the world at one point. How are you doing, Andy?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on. It's always fun to sort of talk about the game and making it and everything. It's a nice trip down memory lane.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about an update that you're doing later on as well. But first, let's start from the very beginning. And we always ask our guests, what was their first video game experience that stood out to them?
I think the earliest I can remember is handheld electronic games. So Game & Watch and was it Astro Wars, I think? Yeah, but so they sort of, I just automatically liked them. And then it was going down the arcade, Scramble, Phoenix, around that era. And then Pac-Man, obviously. That was an amazing thing to experience.
I love Phoenix. I think that's such an underrated shoot 'em up.
Yeah, no, I think it might be one of the first games with a boss.
Yeah.
Which you got the spaceship, and I loved that. That caught my imagination straight away, having to blast your way through the spaceship to get to the mother alien.
Well, it's cool that the arcade was kind of your foundation then. I mean, when did gaming come home for you then? When did you get your first home machine, and how did you get it?
It was when I was 9 years old, and my form tutor, he was quite ahead of his time. He bought this was before they sort of mandated computers were in every classroom. He bought his own one in, because he thought that is something we should be familiar with and everything. And it was a VIC-20. And something clicked straight away. As soon as I realized you could plug this into the television and then you could type things and it would appear on the screen, or you could get a joystick and move things around on a television screen, that seemed like complete magic to me. And it just really, really captured my imagination. So whenever there was any opportunity, I was always on the VIC-20, and he let us load up games and everything. I can't actually remember. I think they were mainly listings he typed in from magazines. There's one set in a Cabbage Patch, which I've been trying to find for years and years and years, but there's no trace of it anywhere on the internet. But I can remember that, really, really liking that. And then, so I told my parents, obviously, and they got me a ZX Spectrum as my first computer at home, which came with Horace Goes Skiing, obviously, the legendary Horace. And I knew as soon as I touched that VIC-20 and I started messing around with BASIC and everything, that's what I wanted to do. Just something clicked, and I knew that I'd wanted to make a game and hopefully get it published. That had always been my dream. I want to see my game on a shelf in a shop.
That's really cool of your teacher to bring it in, when there wasn't any around, and then get you into programming. Yeah.
He was a great teacher. I think there's he was the best teacher in my junior school, Mr. Coles, and then Mr. Pateman in my secondary school. He was quite similar. They sort of, I think they could see in me that this is what I wanted to do. And so they really, really helped me. I think everyone has a teacher which really sort of, hopefully anyway, which they connect with and who helps them pursue their dreams, as it were.
Also, you were playing about with calculators as well. And
oh yes, that's when I should have been doing A-level maths, which I worked so hard for my GCSEs, and I got my bit of paper with my grades on. I did really well, so I wanted to make my parents proud and everything. But it was like a sinking feeling as well, because I'd worked so hard, and there were just these letters on a bit of paper. And back then there were no courses in games design or making games. So I didn't really see what I'd worked so hard for. I didn't see myself, didn't see it sort of taking me anywhere. So A-levels were just such a slog. They're obviously a lot harder than GCSEs as well, but my heart wasn't in it anymore. And so at the time I was doing A-level maths, and I'd got one of the first graph plotting calculators. It was a Casio one, and it opened like a DS. And it had a rudimentary programming language on it. And my friend had one as well. So I thought, to make things more interesting and than the schoolwork were being set, we challenged each other to see if anyone could make a game for it. And the game I chose was an artillery game, which I'd always loved. Going back to the Spectrum, I think I typed it in for a magazine back then on the Spectrum, and I'd always loved the physics in them. So I managed to make a little artillery game on this Casio calculator, which had a randomly generated landscape and everything. And, two tanks firing at each other, picking the angle. I was really, really proud of it. But that's when the random landscape, especially, that's what really, really interested me. I love that. I love games where everyone is different.
Yeah.
And so the random landscape really interested me. So that made me want to put it on the Amiga. And luckily my art teacher at school, Mr. Pateman, he was quite similar to my teacher from junior school. He had bought his own computer in, which was an Amiga. And we actually persuaded the school to get an Amiga to put it in there permanently. And so I took over a corner of the art room. And again, when I should have been doing other things, I started making this artillery game on the Amiga.
That's fantastic. So the Amiga was obviously, such a powerhouse when that machine came out. Do you remember getting your own Amiga then? Which system was it? And did you get it in a pack?
It was when the Amiga 500 came out in 87. Because my parents always told me that when I was about 12, and that I was always in and out of the computer shops in town. And Mum was with me one day, and she always told me the story that when I saw an Amiga for the first time, she said my face lit up like nothing she'd ever seen before. Because it was so impressive. It was like a computer from the future. It was like such a huge leap from what anything else at home. And so Mum, after seeing my reaction to it, she went home to Dad's and said to him, we're going to have to work some extra shifts now to get him an Amiga. And obviously that wasn't possible till the Amiga 500 came out. But I think it was from Silica Shop.
Yeah.
Who I love seeing their adverts. They're very closely tied with the Amiga, I think.
It was like heaven. Silica Store was.
Yeah. And it came with a collection of public domain software. So it wasn't one of the official Commodore bundles. It was something that Silica had put together. But it blew me away. You had all these public domain demos with sampled music, sampled sounds, some little games. And obviously back then, I think 87, it was like Marble Madness, Defender of the Crown was out by then. And I think the Amiga is so special to people, I think, because it opened the doors to so many people into so many areas, whether it's music, video, games. Because it had such a great library of games, but it also had an equally great library of productivity software as well.
You mentioned that you're programming on the Spectrum, and obviously that had built-in BASIC. Yeah. And I know from memory, the Amiga came with like an awful version of BASIC, or Amiga BASIC that no one ever used. But we had Francois Lyonnais on the podcast years ago, who was the creator of an incredible a language that was geared towards making games and demos that was BASIC, called Amos. So I know you're a big fan of Amos. Tell us kind of your background with Amos then, and how you started picking that up.
It's like after I'd made the game on the calculator, I wanted to, because the resolution of the screen was like very low and everything. So you had a randomly generated level, but there was only so much you could do with it. And so the Amiga was just sat there. And I thought, let's take the same formulas I'm using to generate the landscape and put it on the Amiga on a high resolution screen and see what we can do with it. And Amos was obviously, I'd always been messing around with BASIC. I taught myself assembly language as well through Jolly on Ralph, his series in Amiga Computing, which taught you how to make a demo and everything. But in terms of making a game, BASIC is a lot easier to just get your ideas up and running and everything. So Amos was great for doing that. And so the first versions of the game on the Amiga were in Amos.
It's amazing, like, the magazines giving away this stuff, but also having those lessons in the back.
Yeah.
I remember following a lot of those tutorials and like learning coding from it. Did you have any like Amos books as well that help you learn?
No, because it's the good thing about BASICs, that you had all the different flavors of them, but at its core, it's still the same sort of thing, and there's variations. It's been how it handles the graphics and sound and everything, but you can sort of get your head around it quite easily. So I bought Amos and the Amos compiler. So I had the manual and everything, but it was quite easy to dive back into it. And then obviously later on with Blitz as well, is quite easy to get into that because they all shared the sort of similar foundation.
Yeah, later we'll get on to Blitz later, but also like you got that and you put it on the school machine. So what was the kind of reaction of your mates seeing this game on the Amiga and the reaction of the school?
I was just creating a game for me and my mates. And that was the main aim, because I was just driven by this. I'm not enjoying school. I've got to do something with my time. So let's try and create something that doesn't get boring, doesn't get repetitive. And that was my aim with the game. So the early ones were just with tanks and everything, and which was interesting. And one of the first things I did when making the Amiga version was make the tanks move around, because artillery games are traditionally static. Now, you one player's on one side, the other player's on the other side. You find your angle, and then once you've got your angle and take into account the wind, you can sort of nail it every time. So I wanted to I introduced movement. So I just wanted to see if I could make the game deeper, and just being able to move around automatically opened up new strategies and everything. And I added the water in for instant kill, which made you take into account where you were positioned and everything. So this was interesting. But the biggest development, because I'd written a ripper at the time called Jack, which was to get the music out demos, because I loved the demo scene, and I'd get the latest demo discs and sit there and try and work out how they did things. So I wanted to explore the modules. I want to look at the graphics. I want to see if I could get things out of that, just to learn how things worked. So my friend, he saw Jack in working on a demo, and it pulled the music out of a demo, and he was very impressed by it. He says, well, can you get the graphics out of Lemmings? And I just put in the ability to look at graphics or something. And what you did with Jack was you load the game up, reset, because the Amiga didn't always clear all of its memory. So once you did a soft reset, you could then look through memory and explore the sounds, the graphics, the music. So I did this with Lemmings, booted up Lemmings, reset, fired up Jack, and then lo and behold, there's all the little Lemming sprites. And so I thought, well, I was really surprised that I could do this, actually. And so then I put them in the game for a laugh to show my friends. And that was a eureka moment, because just changing the tanks into characters made the game a lot more appealing. And I could introduce a lot more movement, so I could expand on what I'd already been doing. And it just clicked for me. And then it became sort of a contest with myself. Well, how deep can I make this game? And the end result was it got banned from school, because people were skipping lessons to play it, and it got quite famous. And then when it got banned, I thought, right, I'm onto something here. This is what I want to do. I want to try and develop my game, and then hopefully get it published in some way further down the line.
I love the idea of an artillery-based game based on Lemmings. Have you still got any of those, any of the early code lying around anywhere?
I've still got my original Amiga, which I'm using at the moment for the update, as you mentioned earlier, to Worms Director's Cut. And so I haven't tried to fire it up. I should be able to fire up the early versions of it, but I haven't tried. The earliest working ones would go back to when it was Total Wormage and everything, which is when I changed out the sprites and everything.
Well, you mentioned Lemmings. I mean, was Lemmings a big inspiration for you then? And
because I think apart from the gameplay, which was great, it was just the animation I loved because it was so detailed for the size of them. And for my game, I needed things that were small anyway. And so Lemmings, I want to try and get as much character into Worms as they managed to get into the Lemmings. And I picked Worms especially, mainly because they hadn't been in the game before. But I also thought by their nature and what they look like, I thought I could get enough detail into them whilst being small, and also hopefully get enough character into them. I always imagined like when they slammed into the ground and then twang like a ruler. That had always been in the back of my mind. Thought I could do that with them, and that the aim was to try and make something as appealing as Lemmings.
Did you play any of the extra packs as well? Because with Lemmings, they like themed them for Christmas, and they all had like different personalities. Little Santa hats on and everything. Yeah, stuff like that.
No, it was obviously like a brilliant game, and it was and it was just having the difference between tanks and actual characters was huge, and it's one of those things where you instantly thought, why has no one done that before? Because it was just natural fit.
We mentioned artillery. I mean, I do remember other games on the Amiga, stuff like Scorched Tanks, and there's Scorched Earth as well on the PC. Were they any influence at all on your idea?
No, I can remember playing very early on, but like in the Amiga from after I got the 500. There's one called Tanks with an X at the end, which is a nicely done one, very Amiga-y. I think it had, I think it used dual playfield for parallax and everything. And I played that one and liked it. But once I started on my own version and I was setting out to make a proper artillery game and see how deep I could make it, I made a point of not playing any other ones because this was back in 91. So I never saw Scorched Earth on PC. So I didn't have access to a PC. And I think Scorched Tanks was 94, I think. But once I started making my artillery game, I sort of didn't want to play anything else in that genre because I wanted it to evolve in its own way because it was real sort of challenge to myself. Well, how deep can I make it? How much strategy can I get into it? And I think I'm glad I didn't play any other ones because then hopefully Worms turned out its own thing really and can stand on its own.
I was wondering at what point did you then move on to Blitz Basic? Because there were two kind of languages in the world of Amiga, the big game creation ones, and that was Amos and Blitz Basic. I was wondering what the differences were and what kind of convinced you to move over to this language.
Blitz was really interesting because it was, up until that came out, it was just a game for me and my friends. You know, my dream was to get a game published and everything, but I wasn't thinking this is the one. I knew I was onto something, but I didn't think I could turn it into a commercial game. Whereas when Blitz came out, its tagline and its whole thing was basically this: you can make a commercial game with it. And Skid Marks was the example. And Skid Marks was very impressive. You know, it ran at full frame rate. It was as good as that sort of game could be. And so I was very curious to play around with Blitz. And then Amiga Format gave it away on their cover disc, which was amazing. And it's like, that's what I think Amiga Format and the other Amiga magazines deserve a lot of credit for giving away so many interesting packages, because the Amiga demanded really you did more with it than just play games. You know, whether it was, it usually came bundled with Deluxe Paint. So I think everyone messed around with Deluxe Paint and spent as much time in that as playing some games.
I remember as a user, I'd look at a game and often it'd be like a PD game or something, and I could go Amos, and then I'd see something with a bit more speed or something, and I go, oh, Blitz Basic. So what were the differences with the speed ups then? Like,
because as it was a basic, I ported it over quite quickly, and Blitz was a lot faster. So suddenly the game was running at full frame rates, no matter what was going on. And so I thought, let's make this a commercial game. And at the same point, Amiga Format said they're running the competition, which Acid Software involved with as well. And I suddenly saw this is the opportunity I could get my game noticed. So if I can rewrite it, obviously that's when I decided to replace the Lemmings with Worms, rewrite the whole thing. And my plan was to enter into this competition, get it noticed, and then see what happens. So Blitz, the other advantage with Blitz is it has some elements of C. They're called types in Blitz, which are like structures in C, which allows you to group a load of variables all together, which was really, really handy. Because obviously with Worms, you had to have what their job was, what their energy was, where they were on the screen, what damage was done to them. So whereas in Amos, you'd have to have all these different variables with different names for them. In Blitz, you just create a type called .worm, worm.type. And then you could then have all these different variables and group them all together. And it just, as well as being a lot easier to develop for, I think that made it a lot quicker as well. There's Mark Sibley, who sadly passed away at the end of last year. He was the creator of Blitz, and he wrote games himself. So he had a very good understanding, not only of the Amiga, but also the development environment you wanted. And for me, Blitz, I was like a duck to water. It was the perfect language for creating my game. And you could put inline assembly language. You had these, as say, the elements from C, as I'd mentioned, and then it was all in BASIC, which I had a good understanding of. So I was able to basically not only port the game, but then add an awful lot more to it before the deadline for the Amiga Format competition, which was in 94.
It's funny because I remember picking up that issue of Amiga Format, issue 52. Vividly remember where I was in the train station in Newcastle upon Tyne. Saw it in the little newsagent there with that. I'm looking at it now. Yeah, Blitz Basic on the cover disc. It was a zombies like shooting game on it as well. A Team 17 demo actually, coincidentally called Overdrive. We'll obviously get onto the Team 17 connection soon. I mean, tell us a bit more about this, the Amiga Format competition then. I mean, how did it kind of work, and where did you get to with it? And did you get much feedback off them? What was kind of the end result of that?
I only found the answer to this quite recently, the end of last year, actually, because I was speaking to Simon from Acid Software, who were running the competition. So I had a few, I think the deadline, my memory's a bit rusty. I think it was around February of 94, the first few months of 94 anyway. And the magazine came out in October, November of 93. So I had a few months to do it, which I thought I'd be able to do. And I then literally just threw myself into the game. I'd left, I'd quit my A-levels at this point because I stayed on an extra year to do A-level art because I honestly had no idea what I was doing, and everything. But I quit that. I told my teacher what I wanted to do because I said I want to try and get my game published. And he turned around and said, "Andy, you're good. You're not that good." This was my form tutor, which was nothing's driven me on then. Not the art. The art teacher was really good and really supportive, but my form tutor, nothing has driven me on more than that comment. And I thought,
when someone tells you can't do something, right, I'll prove you wrong.
I'm determined to prove him wrong. So then I worked in I've been very fortunate actually. Everything seems to have slotted into place. We had a local computer shop, which was purely Amiga. It was a Commodore only shop. So I was working part-time in there and then programming through the night, and then customers in the shop would play test it the next day. And so I got it to a point where it was, I thought, good enough to enter into the competition. So I sent it off to Amiga Format, and then I heard nothing. There was no feedback, no nothing. Months went by. I was still working on the game in the meantime, but I was really curious what had happened to it. And then eventually they printed the results in the magazine, and there was no mention of Total Wormage, as it was called then. And I only found out recently it was disqualified because I hadn't sent in the source code.
Oh, wow.
Oh no!
Because
And they hadn't told you.
Yeah, because I didn't. I must have missed that bit because I honestly did not know it was a requirement. I could see why it was a requirement, so they knew it was a Blitz game. Although having said that, if I had to send in the source code, I'm not sure if I would or I don't know what I'd have done in that situation because I was very protective of the game at this point, and I posted it to myself to prove copyrights and everything and all the things you're meant to do. So I probably would have because that was my opportunity, but I'm still not entirely sure. It's an interesting thought. If I had known what I would have done.
I was wondering as well, you mentioned you worked in an Amiga shop. There were loads of these like little independent Amiga holdout kind of shops when, Commodore, it was starting to hit the pan and stuff. These places would still be busy. There'd be, people sharing information and stuff. What was the atmosphere like there and, the kind of community surrounding it?
It, like you say, it was like a proper little local community and like, of all ages as well, because obviously you'd have the kids coming in to get the latest games and everything. But because of the Amiga, because of its, because of how broad the appeal of it was, that obviously their fathers and even mothers, daughters, everyone, was doing things with the Amigas. And, Commodore going bankrupt in 94 was personally very depressing news, to say the least. But Commodore UK chugged on a bit longer. And even when Worms came out in September 95, the Amiga there was still a market there. I think because people were so passionate about it, it took a while before it eventually collapsed and people moved. I think the PlayStation was the big one in 95. That's when I think a lot of holdouts thought, well, now it's time to move on. But the UK market was very geared towards home computers. The 8-bit consoles weren't as popular as the Spectrum and the Commodore 64 and everything. And then people naturally migrated to the Amiga for 16-bit. And although the Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo, they did sell, they didn't have the huge impact they had in other countries, I don't think. I think it's when the PlayStation launched, I think that's when a lot of people jumped ship.
Yeah, I've heard a quote before that the Amiga was really the last great home computer.
Definitely the most special. Anyway, it had someone had a T-shirt on saying the other week at one of the events I went to, so the only computer with a soul.
Yeah, and
I'd agree with that because if you read the story of how it was developed, it was a very small team of people with a very unorthodox method. They made a joy board, which was like similar to the Wii balance board, but way back in the 80s. And then when they were debugging the actual Amiga hardware, they'd sit on it to balance, to get into the train of thought. And that's why the Amiga's error message was called a guru meditation, because that's what they were doing. They were balancing on a balance board. And you hear stories like that, and it was all done in a garage. And I think when you create something in that manner and you are so passionate about something, it spills over into everything you do. And in terms, they made magic, really. They made magic happen.
And I think it's amazing that like Worms came out at the like end of the life of the commercial Amiga, and kind of seeing that come out, and that it was like the last gasp, but it was a really good one, and it went out to all these other systems. It's been ported to loads.
It's one of the things that's really nice is it is seen as an Amiga game, and people know it was born on the Amiga, because without the Amiga I couldn't have done any of this. The Amiga's the original tagline was only Amiga makes it possible, and for me that was very, very true. If my mum and dad hadn't worked those extra shifts to get me that Amiga 500, I don't know what I would have done, really, because making games was my passion.
Well, I think, with Worms, there was a lot of really good aspects in there, like comedy as well. And some of the samples, I was wondering, like, how you did the voice samples. Did you have, like, a sampler at home? And what your comedy influences were as well?
Well, I grew up on Monty Python, and I think my main humour was Airplane and Police Squad, Monty Python, and Chris Morris. I think they're my holy trinity of comedy. But especially Monty Python was a huge influence. And then also Jeff Minter's games on the Commodore 64. So he liked putting animals in games, and I like putting animals in games. So I think we can link back to that as well. But I wanted a game that didn't take itself too seriously, because as soon as I swapped the tanks out for characters, it instantly became a bit funny. And I could see the potential in it. So I wanted to build on that. And because if there was humor in the game, then you're more likely to, you basically cast a wider net then. Because I wanted to try and create a game that even people who didn't like computer games would play. And when I was in the computer shop, one of the best memories was one of the playtesters. He was playing it and everything, and his dad came in to collect him. But instead of taking him home, he sat down to play the game as well. And they were both playing the game for a few hours later. And to have that cross-generational appeal, again, that's when I sort of thought, well, yeah, no, you've got something here. So I will build on that. And making people laugh that's an addictive thing to do as well. Because when the game is making people laugh, you just want to then carry on making them laugh. And it's hard to put it into words, really. It's just like I wanted to try and get something that would have that, even as I said, best way of summing it was, so I said earlier, to make a game that even people who didn't like games would play.
What we call casual gaming today, but it wasn't known as that back then. Yeah.
If you can get that hook, and if you can get that appeal, and humor's one way of doing that. And I just wanted to, if it didn't take itself too seriously, you could have fun. So even if you fail at Worms, it's funny, and it's enjoyable. And that goes back to, I really liked Bomberman, and Bomberman's one of my favourite games, and it's in my top 10 of all time. Bomberman 94 on the PC Engine. And if you fail at Bomberman, it is funny, and everyone has dropped bombs too fast at the beginning and trapped themselves in the corner and blown themselves up. Everybody has done that in Bomberman, and it always is funny. So with where I was making my game, I wanted to try and, if I was aiming to see if I could create a multiplayer game that had as much appeal as Bomberman. And as I say, the fact we're here coming up 30 years later talking about Worms, that's what I'm most proud of, its longevity and the wide appeal it's had.
Yeah, you absolutely nailed that. We did mention before about this Amiga format competition, and actually, blessing in disguise, you forgot to include that source code, because how different things would have been if that just ended up being like maybe a cover disc game, or just something that was limited to the Amiga. Because Acid, obviously they were big on the Amiga with titles, but not on the same level as something like Team 17. So tell us how Worms ended up with Team 17. Because I know you met the late legend that was Martin Brown, didn't you, at a show? How did that kind of work then? What happened there?
Well, as I say, after I saw the results of the Amiga format competition, because it was, being perfectly honest, I was gutted. And, not just the fact they didn't win, but there was just no mention of it, because I had no idea what had happened, whether people had looked at it and just dismissed it. It didn't even cross my mind that it had been disqualified. But as I say, I put too much work into it to give up then, and I didn't want to give up. So, as I was working in the computer shop, they got, a trade newspaper, basically trade magazine, which came through every week, which had the charts and your latest gaming news and the wholesaler adverts and things like this. So I've forgotten what it was called now, but I used to religiously read it each week. And in 1 week, they had news of the ECTS, and not only was there news of the ECTS, which was the European Computer Trade Show, it had tickets as well, because obviously the Colin, who owned the shop, he was obviously signed up as a retailer, and so retailers automatically got access to the trade show. And not that he didn't want to go or anything, but I thought, well, this is my one shot left to try and get my game noticed. So it was on a Saturday. So I just hastily printed out a notice and said, apologies, the shop will be shut today. Because I was basically running it at that point for Colin. He wasn't in that much. So I just stuck a notice on the door, closed up for the day, got on a train and went up to London. And Team 17 were top of my list. They were the first and only company I went to, because I saw it as a very Amiga-y game. And I wanted to go to a very Amiga-y company. And obviously Team 17 had always been there for the Amiga. And so I thought that was a good fit. So I had my 2 floppy disks with scruffy labels on, with Total Wormage written on them. Walked up to Team 17, and it was Martin at the stand. And went, do you still look at games? And he went, sure. And took me over to one of their Amigas, and I started loading it up. And I can remember saying, you're not going to like this, it's a bit weird, which is probably not the best sales pitch, but that's what I went with. And then I gave him a quick demo, and literally after 5 minutes, he just went, do you want it published? And I was really taken aback by this. Because when you've been working on something for so long and you're so close to something, it's very hard to imagine what someone's reaction to it for the first time will be. And obviously coming on the back of the Amiga format competition, I still wasn't sure what people would make of it at all. So I can't remember the rest of that meeting is a blur. I can't remember it, but I never dreamt it would go that way. And, I'll always be eternally grateful to Martin for taking a risk on that weird little game. And it's very sad what happened, obviously, and he's no longer with us. But yes, I'll always be grateful that he took a punt on that weird game, presented in a very unorthodox way at ECTS.
I think it's amazing with Team 17, actually, because as you said, they've been with the Amiga for a long time. They started as 17-bit software, a PD company, public domain. And then they had a few hits, Alien Breed and Super Frog and stuff like that. But really, Worms kind of put them on the map as well. So it must have been amazing for them as well to have an Amiga user and a developed title kind of come in, and then, they think, right, we can really work with this and turn it into a full release.
I mean, it's great that Team 17 are still going and, still on the independent side of gaming. And they put out titles. It's because I think one of the big difficulties for people these days, and in music as well, is getting noticed.
Yeah.
It's because so much music is being released now. So many games are being released now. And, I can imagine if I was in that position now, you'd need some help, really, and people with experience and also a track record so that people can say, oh, it's a Team 17 game, we'll check that out, rather than just releasing something into the void and, it just being lost in amongst all these other things. And Worms has obviously played its part in helping Team 17 keep going and everything. That's... it's nice to think my game sort of played a part, and that they're still here, they're still going, and they're still, still all about the games, which is, again, one of the reasons I went to them is, it wasn't, they weren't a big, huge, I was very, very wary of taking my game to a huge sort of conglomerate.
Yeah.
And I think one of the nicest things about Team 17, when I went up to sign the contract, because I was convinced it was a wind up, and it wasn't until I signed the contract that it became real in my head. But they were based in this old Victorian building in Wakefield, and it was so friendly and sort of casual. I can remember when I went in there, there's people watching Army of Darkness and stuff. So I thought, yeah, that's good. And it was very relaxed, pizza boxes everywhere, and it was I could slot into that sort of environment. Whereas I imagine if I'd aimed too big or something and gone for a big, huge multinational company, who knows what would have happened. Team 17 have always looked after me, and I think part of that reason is because it came from something small. Worms came from something small. Team 17 came from something small, and there's a a connection there. And as Worms has grown, so has Team 17 has grown.
Well, after you signed that contract, obviously you had the beta version of it, if you like, the Total Wormage. How did Team 17 help you turn that into the end product then, and kind of give it that polish that it needed to be a commercial title?
Yeah, I'd say Total Wormage was about 80% done then in terms of gameplay and everything. But obviously I wanted the game to be as polished as it could be. And Team 17 had Rico Holmes, who redid the background graphics, so the trees and the snowmen and things like that, because he was a much better artist than me. And then he had Bjorn Lin, who contributed the music. Worms has a great theme tune. I was like, when I heard that, I thought that's exactly how I'd want the game to sound. And when Rico did the graphics, actually, it's the same reaction. That's exactly how I wanted it to look. And then you had the guys who did the box art, which, especially Worms Director's Cut box art. I love that. It's like it's like it's never got old. I was really happy with that. And, a lot of work with Worms was just the right place for the right people at the right time. I think it is, and it just worked. And there wasn't really any time where I had to go, oh no, we mustn't do that. So there was no, they let me finish the game off, and I let them contribute the graphics and the music to it. And it all just came together really, really well.
Do you remember when you first saw those kind of CGI versions of the Worms and, seeing them put into 3D for the first time?
Yeah, that was Chris Blythe, and like Chris was a huge Amiga fan as well. So it was Amiga. It was Amiga Lightwave, I think he used for it. And then it was sent to another machine to render them. Eventually, they got some faster hardware to make it a bit easier. But no, he had a great knack for humor and everything, and I know he was really pleased. I can't remember the term for it, but when you zoom in but move the camera at the same point, it's usually when something's shocked or something, you get this effect. And he pulled that off in Lightwave, and that was the first time I'd seen that done in computer animation. And Chris went on to get a job at DreamWorks and everything off the back of all this, which is really nice to see. As I say, Amiga opening doors all over the place.
I think
the dolly zoom, that was called. Yeah, I remember that from camera classes.
Yeah, I think they were really funny, those sequences. Sometimes people did like FMV sequences and they didn't really hit, or they had cartoons and it felt disconnected from the franchise. But just stuff with all the weapons, the crazy weapons, and like little trouble the worms would get into.
So everything seemed to complement each other. That's why it's really nice. There was no arguments. There was no disagreements. It's just everyone sort of got, because I imagine I come across quite passionate about the game and everything, because I was living and breathing and eating it. But people seemed to get where I was coming from, and then they could see what we're aiming for, and ended up with a really, the end result turned out really, really well. And the animations were great. They set the tone for the game as well with the humor. And I say the humor is quite a key part of it all.
Well, looking at the design of the game and kind of the elements that you had in there as well, I mean, how did you come up with the weapons and stuff like instant replays as well? Because that was amazing when you had a really good win over your mate and then being able to see it replayed on the screen. Yeah, that was a really nice touch. Yeah. Where did that idea come from?
The weapons, they all seem natural, actually. Obviously, like bazooka and grenade were obvious. I was really, really pleased with the shotgun idea, because when I thought I put a shotgun in it, and then obviously shotgun 2 shots, and then it's like two moves in the same turn, and which is obviously very useful. You've got 2 worms on low energy, you can take them both out with the shotgun. And I wanted, so that when I came up with that, I then wanted each weapon to have its own use case, and so then, and I also wanted a lot of like tributes to other games. So that's when the Dragon Punch and the Fireball went in, which had to be renamed, unfortunately. into Fire Punch and Dragon Ball, which personally I thought like Dragon Ball's more of a contentious name than Dragon Punch. But anyway, they had to change. And then, so obviously they were your close combat weapons. So did less damage and didn't hit as far. But again, you could do, if two worms positioned above each other, one above each of the other one, you could get a double Dragon Punch in. And I wanted all these use cases. And I was constantly adding to it that 20%, maybe that I sort of ended up adding a lot in that 20%. So like Banana Bomb and the sheep went in. Banana Bomb was a tribute to hard guns, because in hard guns on the Amiga, the most powerful weapon in the game is a banana, and it's a secret weapon. And I absolutely, we adored hard guns. We played it 4-player, and it was, deserves a lot more recognition, I think. And it was that 4-player co-op. I didn't really see it again done as well until Phantasy Star Online, which was like 7 years later. So I'd say Hard Guns was very ahead of its time.
Yeah, we had Steve Hammond on the podcast a couple of years ago. Such an underrated game, isn't it? Yeah.
The sad thing is, like, when people are listing their top 50 Amiga games or whatever, Hard Guns gets forgotten about. And it's on some of the lists, but on most of the lists I see, and on when people are posting their favourite Amiga games on Facebook or something, it always gets left off. So I always sing the praises of Hard Guns whenever I get the opportunity, because it's maybe in now we're used to real-time 3D first-person games. Maybe it's harder to appreciate now, but back then it was truly something. Yeah, Dungeon Master was amazing, and then Hard Guns came along. We give you 4-player Dungeon Master with sci-fi co-op, and the music was amazing. Like I said, I didn't see it done as well until Phantasy Star 9 years later. And then other weapons like the sheep. I originally drew the sheep because I was going to have it wandering around the level, just to give a more interactive sort of background element. And then it just suddenly hit me, why not turn it into a weapon? Because we're already discovering the dark side of worms playing, which is when people bury their worms way underground and tunnel and hide. And so the sheep was originally put in the game to be able to chase down the tunnels and hunt them out. And I was really pleased with the sheep. And then I remember I put it in the game when I was down in Bournemouth. And I took the latest version up to T17, and I could distributed it and everything. And I could hear the laughter from the other offices. And I thought, that's the sheep. And it still makes me laugh. One of my mates did the sound of the sheep. He's really proud of that. He did the bar.
I love the Uzi as well. I thought the length of which you could destroy landscape and terrain with the Uzi. I remember playing with people in tunnels, and you would Uzi through to the tunnel and also get them. That was pretty cool. What about instant replays then as well?
I just one of those things which again, we've always had that shot where like you can't believe you pulled it off. I think quite recently, actually, like last year or something, I was playing the game, and I hadn't played it for a little while, so it's like, I don't want to embarrass myself in my own game. And it's one of the Zap Lives, and I just pulled off a perfect shot, perfect grenade into a tiny little hole, and I was so proud of it and everything. So obviously you want to see it again. And I always remember as a kid the flashing R in the corner of the screen, like in athletics or something, where they show when they show the action replay. So I wanted the flashing R in there, and I wanted the action replay. And yes, again, when you pull something off really, either it's really good or it's really funny, you want to see it again. So the action replay was essential.
Well, in 1997, which sounds crazy late for an Amiga game, Team 17 and you, of course, released what those that know often regard this game as the best in the Worms series, Worms the Director's Cut, which was an enhanced version of the game, specifically for the Amiga, and came with a level editor in there as well. Obviously, very late in the game. I did read that it only sold something like 5,000 copies, which obviously makes it highly collectible today. I mean, how on earth did you convince Team 17 to let you do another Amiga game in 1997?
Yeah, that is. I am very grateful they just let me do all that. I think obviously Worms had been, even on the Amiga, it had sold really well, and it was as you said earlier, it's like I got a really nice message actually on social media quite recently where someone said it had given the Amiga community a shot in the arm to see an Amiga game getting this attention, and and be able to play it as well and not have to sell up and get something else. So because it had been such a success, and seeing Worms at number one was like beyond my wildest dreams. I was given basically complete freedom to do what I wanted, which was really nice. And as I say, they weren't, I wanted to do an AJ upgrade. That's how it started, because I wanted to give back the Amiga the best version of the game I could.
Yeah.
And obviously I hadn't had time to do an AJ enhanced version before. So it just purely started as let's get the game with more colors, get it looking as good as it could. But then also at the same time, behind the scenes, things were being thought about Worms 2. And the first thing I heard about Worms 2, because I was busy on my AJ upgrade, and then I heard that the original spec for Worms 2 was just going to be high resolution graphics, the new graphics style and internet play, but the game was going to be identical. And that sent that, that sent alarm bells ringing basically, because if I just got a prettier version of Worms, I was trying to think of myself in terms of a player. If I got a sequel, I'd want it to be a worthy sequel. And if I got the same game again, just prettier, I'd be annoyed. So they then hit me. Well, I'm busy working on a version of the game at the moment. I can prototype all these weapons and everything in Worms Director's Cut and in the AJ version, and then use that as basis. Let's see what we can come up with. And I looking back, this is when, because Director's Cut's what I'm most proud of. It's like, that's when I feel the humor and the gameplay all came together. And it was like I was in the zone. Ideas were coming like left, right and center. That's where the Concrete Donkey went in, Super Sheep, Baseball Bat, Holy Hand Grenade, Concrete Donkey.
Grandma was the grandma.
Yeah, the old woman.
Yeah.
She was in there as well. The people do like the old woman.
Yeah,
And
she's great.
I really like the sample on the Amiga one where I can't remember his name. And then she turns around and comes back on you. And
Yeah, and then just massive explosion. Yeah.
And it's so it's basically the AJ upgrade suddenly became a prototype of Worms 2. I was good friends with Carl and Dan, who are doing the coding and the graphics. And so I took them up a version of Director's Cut. And as soon as they saw all these weapons and everything, because I was a bit wary, because obviously this is going to make a lot more work, obviously. But Carl and Dan didn't hesitate. They said, right, this is Worms 2. And so Director's Cut was a really useful thing. And I really appreciated being given the freedom to do it. And as it turned out, it was a very worthwhile thing to do, because Director's Cut formed the template for Worms 2, Armageddon, Worms World Party. They were all based on Director's Cut then. And hopefully people think that was a worthy sequel.
For me, I think you had the total customizability of the Amiga. You had every element in there, so people could make levels from D-Paint. There was Oh No More Worms, which is a CD full of levels. People were like uploading stuff onto Aminet as well. It really kind of felt like one of the most heavily modded Amiga games that you could get by the end of it.
The way I saw it is I wanted to sort of try and create sort of like a physics digital playground, as it were, because like I said, even if people weren't playing it correctly, if they're having fun, that's all that mattered. If you're bad at the game, I still want you to have a good time. If you wanted to draw something and put it into the game, why not? Because the whole aim of the game was to create a multiplayer game that wouldn't get boring and that wouldn't get repetitive. So to have the ability to import your own levels from Deluxe Paint, that automatically gives it more lifespan. And then with graffiti mode in Director's Cut, where you could actually draw your levels inside the game to make it even easier, or down to weapon options, how much damage things did, what was in the weapon crates. If you could modify it, I'd let you do it.
Even the voices, you could do your own voices,
the sample sets and everything. And it's and then to see the life, see the sort of see it spring to life, as you say, on Aminet and everything was wonderful. And I always used to check out what levels were people uploading and what sample sets they were going to have. And it was great to see. And I think that has contributed to its lifespan as well. And it's also how fondly people remember the games.
I was always curious as well, because obviously you had these massive hit with Worms, and then everyone loved Director's Cut as well. But you didn't stay in the gaming industry, did you? What kind of happened there? Because I heard that you opened a nightclub after the game. So
that was a bit later. Right. But no, I left during the development of Worms Armageddon, because Armageddon's great, and especially in terms of the consoles never got Worms 2. So to jump from Worms to Worms Armageddon is a big jump. But again, I was still looking at it from, trying to look at it from a fan of the game. If you've been playing it from the beginning and got every version religiously. I was worried that Worms Armageddon was too close to Worms 2. And, it was called Armageddon because it was meant to be the last one. There was going to be there was a trilogy, and that was going to be the last one. So it was the end. So I was really, there were still things I wanted to do. And one of them, I wanted to explore a real-time one-player mode. So, because turn-based against the computer, it's interesting. But you haven't got the feedback you have from a human player. So I've always seen Worms as primarily a multiplayer game. So for the last one in this trilogy, I wanted to explore the one-player side of it. And it was going to be, because it was real time, you could have vehicles, bosses. You start off with a few weapons. It would then teach you, be a more conventional, arcade style game. But obviously that was a big experiment. Now, it might not have worked. I think it might have, but I'm not 100% sure. So because I wasn't coding the game then, we moved on to PCs as the base platform. And there was also, the game had got so big, there was a lot of pressure, understandably, to get the game out for Christmas. So there wasn't the avenues to explore this. And it frustrated me. And I thought that I threw everything into Director's Cut anyway, and there was a good base there for Worms 2 and Worms Armageddon. So I'd been doing it for 7-8 years then. So part of me just wanted a break, and I knew it was in good hands and everything. And I thought, well, if we can't explore the real-time one-player game, then that's a time to sort of bow out of it then. And, I knew it was in good hands and everything. And I've remained in contact with Team 17 and everything. It's not like I sort of, sacked them off, as it were. It was purely, I decided time to have a break, leave it in other people's hands and see what they do with it.
Well, you're actually returning to Worms DC.
Yes.
And we're going to get
alone.
Yeah, we're going to get an update, which is amazing. I really enjoyed the game. I was wondering what needs to be updated. Is there ideas that you've always wanted to put in there?
Well, it was, as I say, it's a few things to make it feature complete. Because it did reach a point where Team 17 said, look, there's barely anything of the Amiga market left. You do have to release it. Because if I'd had my way, I would have still been adding stuff and still been adding stuff and still been adding stuff. So there was a knock on I was staying in a hotel at the time, just up from their offices. And there's a loud knock on the window, and it was Paul Kilburn. He was the producer. And he says, we're releasing it today. And it's like, oh, bloody hell. So I threw in there's one bug in it, which was like, you wouldn't save option sets, which I had to fix and everything, because it was released just purely on the spur of the moment on that day, which fair enough. It had to get out. It had to be released, and it had to be on the shelf. But there are other things I'd wanted to put in there and other things I've been working on which weren't finished. So I don't want to say too much just in case, because going back to 30-year-old code has proved quite difficult and not quite like riding a bike as I thought it would. It's more like, how did I ride that bike in the first place? Because like going through the code and scrolling through it all, it's like I don't know how I did it, and drawing all the worms and everything. There's like hundreds of frames of animation, thousands of lines of code, and I must have been possessed or something. I don't know how I did it. So yeah. I don't want to...
It must be hard to kind of revisit all that stuff and get back into the headspace of
it's slowly coming back, and I've already implemented one of the things I wanted, and some of the other stuff is underway, and there's new ideas I come up with which are in there already working. But it's going to be a nice update. And one of the other opportunities is to get people from the Amiga community and the demo scene involved. And we've got some collaboration levels. We've got a Llamasoft level, a Turrican level, Rough and Tumble. And I've been honoured to be able to speak to the people behind them and said, we're doing this update. It's going to be a free update. Can we have a tribute to your game, or in Llamasoft case, your entire company? And so get Jeff Mintz's approval. That was a dream come true. It feels like coming full circle. So I've gone from the kid playing Hover Bother on his 64 to a Llamasoft level in my game. And not only has it been really nice to be making the game again and to have all this involvement with other people I admire and other games I admire has been great.
It proves that, a lot of these Amiga people are still around and still doing stuff, and having their level involved, I think is fantastic, especially when you've got the interior and the exterior on the maps that you can do now.
Yeah, because the director's cut, the 1.5 update is going to have a lot of dual layer maps, which there was in the original release. There wasn't any. So it's nice to be able to show, because the dual layer is basically a foreground and the background. So whereas in the original, if you imported the level, basically everything would be destructible, everything would be collidable. You'd stand on everything, so you couldn't do things like interiors. So someone came out with a brilliant Red Dwarf level, which we're still trying to get permission to include. And the Red Dwarf is the interior of the spaceship. And you can trot your worm inside, blow up the inside, and it reveals more as it's blown up and everything. And it's really nice to see the game being shown off in all its glory, as it were, what it could do.
I remember one specifically was the Concrete Donkey, based on an ornament that you had at your parents' house, and that would come down and destroy people internally. I hear you have a new weapon that you can't say much about, but that's going to be implemented.
So the new weapons, that's going to be the end. I want to get all the gameplay tweaks and the changes and the additions, but the weapons will be new weapons will be the hardest to add. So I can't promise anything. But in the later games, so I didn't want a Buffalo of Lies in the game, which was going to be, because the Concrete Donkey is the most powerful weapon in the game, and I wanted it's a very offensive weapon in a good way, not offensive in a nasty way. Offensive is a weapon for offense, and the way it drops down and everything, I wanted the same for the Darksiders, the ones who bury all their worms. I wanted the equivalent of they wanted them to have their most powerful weapon as well, which is beneficial to them, and that was going to be the Buffalo of Lies. And the Buffalo of Lies did actually end up in the game, in the later versions of Worms, but I never described how it's meant to work. So it's a bit of a bugbear for me. It's like the weapon's in there, but I can see how it works in my head, and that's not what it's doing in the game at the moment. So in 1.5, if I do get my head around all the code again and can put extra weapons in it, the Buffalo of Lies will be in there in all its glory, and it's a very impressive weapon. It must be said.
Do you think it'll be as famous as the Concrete Donkey?
I can see it getting its own following.
Will you get people turning up to worship?
the concrete donkey got his following. So I think, where there's a force, there's always an equal and opposite force. So I think there'll be the people who reject the donkey have the Buffalo of Lies to turn to. Personally, I'm a donkey person.
Well, Andy, I think it's absolutely amazing that you're back doing Worms on the Amiga again. I know the entire community is so hyped to see what you come up with. I mean, obviously you did a lot of work behind the scenes. I mean, is there any kind of any idea when roughly it'll be out, or is it still kind of just when it's ready?
When it's ready, I think is the best way of putting it. But obviously the 30th anniversary is in November.
Right.
So it's got to be out before then, basically, because it's I see it as part of the 30th anniversary celebrations. And it's, there's some Amiga levels in there as well. There's quite a lot of Amiga references. There's a Blitz level. It's a celebration not only of Worms, but of the Amiga, things I love. It's just a real labour of love again, because that's the best way of describing Director's Cut. It turned from an AJ upgrade into a labour of love. And so if I'm going to update it, I'm going to try and do the same mentality. But so can't give a date yet, but before November.
Yeah, nice. Well, the weather's going to be colder then here in the UK, so I'm thinking already booking a couple of weeks off over Christmas to really get into it. So, really excited for that, Andy, and it's been an absolute blast to hear some of your history as well and the story of Worms. So, thank you so much for coming on and being our guest.
Thank you for having me, and I say that it's always a nice trip down memory lane.